In a world where noise is often mistaken for influence, and constant speech is equated with confidence, the ancient Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius lived, and led, by an opposite code: stillness. He governed an empire, faced wars, betrayals, and personal losses, yet his strength did not come from grand speeches or emotional outbursts. It came from silence, not the silence of fear, but the silence of command, not the silence of absence, but the silence of presence. At the heart of Stoicism lies a profound paradox: the quieter you become, the stronger you are. Marcus Aurelius understood this long before modern psychology gave it language. His book Meditations was never intended for public consumption. It wasn't a PR move. It was a private journal, a quiet space where he confronted his flaws, calmed his thoughts, and rehearsed his values. Why? Because Stoicism teaches us that strength is internal, not performative. You do not need to announce your morality, you need to live it. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus wrote, not as a proclamation, but as a reminder to himself. In silence. This strength of stillness is easily misunderstood in our modern culture. We're trained to think silence is weak, passive, or submissive. We're encouraged to speak up, clap back, win arguments. But Stoicism proposes something different: that the strongest voice you can offer is the one you don't utter in haste. To be silent when provoked, to pause when attacked, to choose response over reaction. This isn't avoidance, it's authority. Marcus Aurelius did not remain silent because he lacked words. He remained silent because he didn't need them to validate his stance. This is the essence of Stoic restraint, not suppression of truth, but refinement of timing. Words, after all, are only as powerful as the clarity that fuels them. And clarity is born in quiet. When you're hurt, it's tempting to explain yourself endlessly. When you're betrayed, you want to confront and expose. When you're doubted, you crave vindication. But Marcus shows us a different path, one where strength is not earned through rebuttals, but through composure. When the world expects you to react, your stillness becomes disruptive. It becomes power. Consider the battlefield of ego. When someone offends you, your instinct is to fight back, prove them wrong, show your strength. But what if the real strength is shown by not needing to prove anything at all? Stoicism challenges the ego's craving for attention. It teaches that the highest form of confidence is to remain grounded, not grandiose. Silence is not retreat, it's resistance without waste. In Marcus's view, when everyone else is drawn into conflict, the one who stands still commands the most space. He knew that reactive noise is cheap. Anyone can argue, anyone can post a clever rebuttal, but very few can endure misunderstanding without collapsing. Very few can hear criticism and not feel the urge to correct it. And fewer still can experience humiliation, betrayal, or anger, and respond with nothing but presence. That is Stoic power. It's not about pretending you're unaffected. It's about choosing to govern what you can control, yourself. This is why Marcus turned to journaling, not speeches. He knew the value of inward reflection, the sacred process of sorting emotions before they turned to actions. When he felt frustration, he didn't vent it publicly. He studied it. When he faced betrayal, he didn't demand apologies. He reminded himself, if someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change. But I must be convinced not by anger, not by pride, but by truth. This is a man who knew how to pause. A man who trusted silence not as a weapon, but as a wall, firm, unshaken, unmovable. And in your life, this principle applies more than ever. When the world demands your reaction, on social media, in relationships, in workplace politics, what if you didn't give it? What if you chose not to argue, but to act in alignment with your values? What if, instead of proving your worth, you focused on preserving your peace? This is how you become silently strong. Not because you hide from conflict, but because you've outgrown the need to broadcast strength. In a storm, trees that bend survive, but even stronger are the rocks that remain unmoved. Marcus Aurelius was that rock, calm, still, and composed. Through personal tragedy, war, illness, and public criticism, his silence was not an absence of opinion. It was the embodiment of mastery. So the next time you're tempted to speak to be seen, to argue to be right, or to react to feel powerful, pause. Remember that silence is not weakness when it's rooted in awareness. That silence is not emptiness when it's chosen with wisdom. And that your greatest strength may be found not in what you say, but in what you have the courage to withhold. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but his true dominion was not over Rome, it was over himself. While the world saw a powerful emperor seated on a throne, the real Marcus was at work in a quieter realm, the battlefield within. His strength was not loud. It was not reactive. It did not depend on dominance over others. It was a discipline cultivated in solitude, early mornings, silent journaling, daily detachment from ego and expectation. This was how Marcus built his power, not in front of others, but away from them. We live in a time that rewards visibility. We're told to document our progress, share our victories, broadcast our struggles. But Marcus reminds us that real transformation is quiet. He didn't post his meditations to gain followers. He wrote them to stay aligned. What is in my control today? That was the question he returned to. Over and over, in the face of war, betrayal, illness, and responsibility. This question didn't make him weak. It made him unbreakable. His daily discipline began before dawn. While the empire still slept, Marcus would rise, not to conquer provinces, but to conquer his thoughts. He would sit in silence, breathing into the moment, inspecting his mind like a general inspects his troops. What thoughts were helpful? What beliefs were illusions? What judgments were weighing him down? The answers were not written for applause. They were written for alignment. This is the difference between public effort and private mastery. Anyone can appear composed for a moment. But can you discipline your mind in darkness? Can you hold your values when no one's watching? That is the work of inner authority. It is not glamorous. It is not applauded. But it is how empires of character are built. Marcus Aurelius used journaling not to express emotion but to investigate it. His words were not emotional outbursts. They were mental blueprints. Each sentence was a recalibration of power, bringing thought and action into harmony. When he wrote, "If it is endurable, then endure it. If not, then stop complaining," he wasn't preaching. He was reminding himself that victimhood is a choice. Complaint is a delay. Discipline is the path. And so he practiced. When he felt insulted, he didn't retaliate. He studied the feeling. When he felt overwhelmed, he didn't escape. He returned to reason. Every emotion became material for mastery. Every challenge became a test of his inner architecture. This is what Stoicism teaches us. Your true authority begins the moment you stop trying to control others and start mastering yourself. Inner authority is built in layers. It starts with the morning, how you meet the day before the world imposes its noise. Marcus practiced what we now call morning intentionality. He would ask, "What can I control today? Who do I want to be? No matter how others act. What virtues do I want to embody? Justice, courage, wisdom, temperance?" These were not rhetorical questions. They were his compass, his emotional shield, his silent creed. We often think of discipline as something harsh or militant, but for Marcus, it was gentler and deeper. Discipline wasn't about restriction. It was about remembrance, remembering that external chaos cannot touch your inner peace unless you grant it access. That others may act unjustly, but you still choose justice. That life may be unstable, but your principles are not. The greatest battle Marcus ever fought was not on a battlefield. It was in the silence of his own soul. Every day, he trained. Every day, he prepared, not for applause, but for alignment. He knew the world could not be trusted to stay fair, so he stopped expecting it to be. Instead, he built a mind that was fair, a self that was solid, a will that could not be broken. We're not emperors, but we are rulers of something equally important, our response. And we're asked the same questions each day. Will we rise with intention? Or fall into habit? Will we journal to correct ourselves? Or blame the world for being unfair? Will we wait to be tested before training? Or will we train silently, before the test ever arrives? You don't need an audience to become strong. You don't need applause to become wise. Like Marcus, you can build resilience without witnesses. You can win battles no one sees. And in time, those victories will shape you into someone who no longer needs validation to feel complete. That's what Marcus understood. That's why he wrote. That's why he repeated his principles to himself daily, not to sound virtuous, but to remain virtuous when virtue was inconvenient. When you build self-discipline in private, you gain power in public, not because you're trying to be powerful, but because you no longer need to perform. So ask yourself, in the spirit of Marcus, what is in your control today? What would it look like to start your morning with silence? Not scrolling? To replace reaction with reflection? To treat your thoughts as soldiers and your values as the general? Your empire is not built in noise. It's built in stillness. And every quiet decision you make, every moment of restraint, every act of self-respect, every principle you hold in private, is another stone in the fortress of your character. That's how Marcus Aurelius ruled. And that's how you rise, not above others, but beyond yourself. There is a hidden power in withholding words, a wisdom that Marcus Aurelius embodied in the quiet spaces between speeches and edicts. Silence wasn't merely a tactic for the Stoic emperor, it was a moral stance, a strategy of conservation, and often, the loudest statement a man could make. In today's world of oversharing and constant commentary, silence is misjudged as weakness. But Marcus knew better. He understood that the more we feel the need to explain ourselves, the less grounded we truly are. Strategic silence begins with this realization. You don't need to prove your clarity to those committed to misunderstanding it. Let's start with a common scenario, an argument. Most people rush to defend, justify, or retaliate, but Marcus would ask, to what end? His words in Meditations guide us. It is not necessary to be angry at those who offend you. In other words, offense is a choice, and so is your response. Reactivity is the mind's leash, silence, its liberation. Marcus practiced what we now call situational silence. During public crises, betrayals, and even moments of personal failure, he didn't write public manifestos. He didn't tweet his side of the story. He wrote to himself, journals, reflections. He processed privately, not to suppress emotion, but to sharpen clarity. He believed wisdom could not be outsourced through noise. It must be built inwardly, moment by moment. And that's where the true lesson lies. Not all silence is strong, but all strong people eventually master silence. Strategic silence is not avoidance. It's an active refusal to waste energy on what does not elevate or clarify. Think of it this way. Every explanation you give to someone who's already decided not to understand you is energy stolen from your own evolution. Here's how Marcus wielded silence as a tool of power. 1. In the face of betrayal, he didn't confront or expose. He observed. He adjusted his circle. He acted, not for drama, but for alignment. That's strategic silence, responding without a need for spectacle. 2. During injustice, Marcus held a position where retaliation was easy, but his writings show that justice, to him, was internal equilibrium first. He believed that your first duty was to remain unharmed by what is not in your control. His silence, then, was a shield, not a surrender. 3. Amid chaos and confusion, when people panicked, Marcus anchored. He didn't escalate uncertainty with words. He diffused it with steadiness. That, too, is silence, not the absence of sound, but the presence of calm. In practical terms, strategic silence means pausing instead of pouncing. It means resisting the temptation to explain every decision or defend every boundary. It's understanding that dignity doesn't always speak, it simply exits. When should you practice strategic silence? In heated arguments. Let silence be your boundary. If they're yelling, you don't need to match it. When you're misunderstood, let your life explain. Time is the best witness. After being wronged, withdraw your energy. Don't retaliate, recalibrate. In moments of power, speak less. The more certain you are, the less you'll need to prove it. Now, that doesn't mean never speaking. It means knowing when to. It means realizing that speech without purpose is noise, and speech with intention is influence. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Don't waste what remains of your life in speculating about others. It is not what others do that should trouble you, but what you do with that." In that, he made it clear. You owe them nothing, but you owe yourself everything. There's also a psychological effect of strategic silence. It disarms. People expect reaction. They expect explanation. When you offer neither, they're forced to confront the truth of their own actions. In that pause, introspection begins, and whether or not they ever admit it to you, they feel it. This is why silence is not passive, it's catalytic. It doesn't just protect your energy, it often shifts the entire dynamic. While they are tangled in stories and assumptions, you are ascending in simplicity. That's the power of doing nothing externally while strengthening everything internally. To harness this yourself, try these Stoic micro practices. Practice 1 moment of silence daily in conflict. Don't reply immediately, just breathe. Journaling instead of venting. When triggered, write, not to publish, but to understand. Withdraw gracefully. You don't have to slam the door to close it. Just stop opening it. Detach without announcement. Let your absence communicate what your words no longer need to. Let's conclude with a subtle truth Marcus Aurelius lived by but rarely said aloud. Sometimes, the greatest show of strength is to say nothing at all, and do something extraordinary instead. Strategic silence is not about staying silent forever. It's about not speaking until your words can rise from wisdom, not wounds. Because the moment your silence becomes louder than your explanation, you've entered the highest form of Stoic strength. It is one thing to hold your tongue. It is another to calm the raging dialogue inside. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, knew the difference. He didn't seek merely to look composed. He trained himself to be composed. Not once, not in appearance, but perpetually, in the inner court of the mind, where storms form long before they show. Stoicism teaches us a radical idea. The mind must be governed, or it will govern you. The chaos outside is nothing compared to the chaos within, until we take control. Marcus practiced emotional mastery not through suppression, but by separating what is from what we add to it. This is the core Stoic technique. Separate fact from interpretation. When faced with insult, betrayal, loss, or fear, Marcus didn't ask, "Why me?" He asked, "Is this truly harmful, or is my judgment making it so?" That small shift in questioning turns the tide from victimhood to sovereignty. He reminded himself, and us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is emotional alchemy. Pain may arise, but suffering, prolonged emotional disturbance, requires consent, and Marcus refused to give it. In this way, Marcus Aurelius practiced what modern thinkers now label as mindfulness. Long before it became trendy, his version wasn't about incense or meditation apps. It was about conscious redirection. When he felt himself slipping into anxiety or anger, he returned to breath, he returned to reason, he returned to the present moment. Let's be clear. Emotional mastery does not mean emotional denial. Anger will come, fear will rise, confusion will flood the mind, but none of these have the right to linger unless you grant permission. Marcus used 3 tools to keep his inner storm quiet. 1. Breath training. When overwhelmed, he didn't react, he breathed. Inhale awareness, exhale tension. The breath is always within your control. That's why it's the Stoics' first anchor. 2. Journaling rage. Instead of unleashing emotion onto others, Marcus wrote, in private, not to vent, but to dissect. Why was he angry? Was it just? Was it ego? Was it fear disguised as pride? This self-inquiry brought clarity, and clarity brought peace. 3. Perspective realignment. He constantly reminded himself, this, too, shall pass. The worst day of your life is still just a day. The insult is just noise. The betrayal is a page, not the book. Through reflection, he would often quote Epictetus or remind himself that even emperors die and are forgotten. In the face of that vastness, most slights shrink to irrelevance. Emotional reactivity is a drain. It scatters your energy, distorts your judgment, and leaves you vulnerable. Marcus knew that every time you react, you hand over your inner authority to the external world. But when you practice emotional neutrality, not numbness, but calm observation, you reclaim your seat at the center of your own life. He understood that stillness amplifies power. The person who cannot be triggered cannot be controlled, and the person who does not need to respond becomes the person everyone watches. That's why silence is not just a tactic, it is a force multiplier. Marcus also held close a powerful Stoic phrase: the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This was not just poetry, it was a plan. When he felt insulted, he used it to strengthen humility. When abandoned, he trained self-reliance. When criticized, he clarified his values. He turned the enemy into exercise equipment. The pain became a process of purification. Silently, you can do the same. Next time emotion rises, breathe. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, reset. Journal. Ask, what exactly am I feeling? Why? What story am I telling? Reframe. Instead of, why is this happening to me? Ask, what is this teaching me? Marcus did not always feel strong, but he practiced strength, daily, silently, and over time. That practice became who he was. Emotional mastery isn't a moment, it's a muscle, one you build in the quiet gym of the mind. So when the inner storm rages, don't shout over it, don't suppress it, simply sit with it, observe it, and direct it. Let calm be the container. Let reason be the rudder. Because when your emotions no longer own you, the world can no longer shake you. And in that stillness, in that centeredness, you become what Marcus always aimed to be. Untouchable by chaos, moved only by purpose. In a world driven by noise, Marcus Aurelius left behind a legacy not of conquest, but of calm. He did not chase glory, argue his greatness, or seek applause from the crowd. His most enduring power came from silence, not the absence of words, but the presence of wisdom. Though he was emperor of the most powerful empire in the world, Marcus did not issue proclamations demanding remembrance. He wrote quietly, privately, often to himself. And yet, his meditations have lived longer than most monuments. That's the paradox. True power doesn't need to shout. It simply endures. Marcus never sought to dominate others through charisma or theatrics. He cultivated something much deeper, character. His strength came not from the swords of legions, but from the discipline of restraint. In his silence was certainty, and in his stillness was sovereignty. He did not react to every insult. He did not chase vindication. He embodied what Epictetus said so simply: don't explain your philosophy, embody it. We often think impact requires visibility. We think to change the world, we must be heard. But Marcus reminds us otherwise. You don't have to perform to be powerful. You don't have to explain to be understood. The strength of your character, the clarity of your thoughts, and the steadiness of your principles, they are louder than any performance. When you act with integrity in silence, when you choose discipline over display, you become unforgettable. You no longer speak to prove. You no longer act to impress. You simply are, anchored, aware, and aligned with something greater than the need for attention. Marcus's legacy teaches us that silence is not invisibility. It is not weakness. It is the highest form of control. When the world expects noise and you offer presence, you command attention without asking for it. You lead without needing followers. And you impact lives without ever raising your voice. This is the silent legacy. It is the kind that outlasts centuries. because it was never built on spectacle. It was built on substance. So the final mantra, for those who walk the Stoic path, is this: let your calm disturb their chaos. Let your stillness echo through time. Let your discipline define your legacy. And let your silence speak what words never could.